Riley J2A here. Okay, back with another episode of Exposing the Spread of the Anti-2A Agenda. Okay, series where I talk about one issue per episode regarding, how anti-gun, ways are carried out. Okay, what means they use to spread these agendas. In previous episodes, I've talked about anti-gun school systems, and I've talked about anti-gun mainstream media. Okay, in this episode, I'm going to be talking about anti-gun jobs, okay, or anti-gun workplaces. Okay, so we're going to get right into that. So, um, you know, I planned on making this video. I have a whole list of ideas for this series, but I was watching a video the other day from a Washington Gun Law, great channel. Check it out. But in this video, he interviewed a truck driver here in Washington who was fired for exercising his Second Amendment rights. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that case, but this really made me think a little and think, I should probably make this video sooner rather than later. This is a big issue, okay? Washington Gun Law also talks a lot about what he calls the privatization of tyranny, okay? Which is basically, these politicians, they want to take your Second Amendment rights, but they can only do so much because we have constitutional Second Amendment rights. So they often, they have private companies doing these anti-gun things for them, doing their work for them, you could say. So that's basically what, the privatization of tyranny means, is where these politicians are getting private companies to do their work for them. Okay. Now, the reason I bring that up is it's a good thing to keep in mind throughout this video as I break down, what I'm going to be talking about today, which is anti-gun jobs, okay? And we've seen this happen already. I'm not going to mention any company names in this video. But yeah, I think we can all know what we're talking about. Certain couple shipping companies, certain online banking company, as of the last few months. So, keeping all that in mind, I'm going to start talking, about some of the points I have. I'm just going to talk about a few things regarding anti-gun workplaces. Okay, so getting into it. Okay, so I'm going to get into these talking points. I'm going to give a couple disclaimers. Okay, first, not talking about government jobs. Second, I'm not talking about employees of anti-gun companies who are anti-gun themselves, because, they almost definitely agree with these policies. I'm talking about those who are pro-gun, but they work at an anti-gun company or job or whatever you want to call it. So that's who I'm talking about. Okay. Now this can be broken down into a few different categories. Okay. Now there's companies who have anti-gun policies, but it's really just for like insurance reasons. The people don't care. They'll look the other way. It's kind of just a don't ask, don't tell situation. Okay. I'm not really talking about that either, because that's pretty easy to work with, okay? I think, most people, okay, they can deal with that situation. And I'm also not talking about gun-free zones determined by the state, okay? Because if you work inside of a gun-free zone determined by the state and you are carrying a firearm, you'll get in legal trouble, actual legal trouble, for carrying there if anybody was to find out. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you what to do, but you'll be in trouble if you're doing that, okay? So I'm more talking about the place in where It's not a gun-free zone by the state. It's just company policy that restricts people from carrying there. Um, and yeah, so that's mainly what I'm talking about. And I know there's going to be people out there saying, "Oh, well, these companies have the right to do what they want." Oh, yeah, they do have the right. And that's very true. It's unfortunate because they take advantage of that right. Um, and these rights are kind of extreme. I'll be honest. Like you and I have constitutional rights to do certain things, but those things stop at a certain point if they start infringing on other people's rights, right? These companies, however, they have the right to do what they want, to include taking your rights. Okay, and we're going to get into that in this video, where I'm going to talk about these companies taking your Second Amendment rights, but also even you're trying to take your First Amendment rights, okay? And I'll be getting into all that, but that was just a few disclaimers of what I'm not talking about. Okay, so now that you know what I am talking about, we're going to get into two talking points. One of them is actually, on paper, how these companies disarm you. And then the other one is not on paper, but it absolutely exists. That's going to be discrimination. Okay, so we'll get into that next. Okay, so what these companies do is, they have no gun policies, right? And most big companies have these kind of policies. Unfortunately, today at this point, in 2022. And also, most big companies, those are usually the better paying, more consistent companies. Okay, so people need these jobs, um, but they're forced to, choose between their rights and the job. Okay, now before I go any further, I'm gonna say, um, this is not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. You will never get legal advice from me. I don't give it. Okay, so getting that out of the way. When you're in this situation, like I said, I'm not talking about if a company is in a gun-free zone. That's an actual legal issue. You know, it's more companies that aren't in a gun-free zone, and it's just company policy that says no, you can't have guns here because they don't want them. And I'm also not talking, like I said, about if they don't really care. It's don't ask, don't tell, right? I'm talking about these people have no gun policies because they want them and they're going to enforce them. Okay, that's what I'm talking about in this video. So at that point, you're in a company. A good option is not to work for an anti-gun company, but that's not realistic because, like I said, these are usually better paying and more available jobs, and you need that money, right? So that's not always reasonable. Plus, you might be in a situation where you've worked for a company for 20 years. They didn't have these policies when you started working for them. In any case, the scenario we're talking about, you find yourself working for a anti-gun company that has no gun policies, rather these be on in the building or on company property or in company vehicles, not allowed to have your gun there. Okay, now at that point you have options. Okay, you could just carry concealed and hope nobody finds out. If they do, you lose your job. Or you could leave your gun at home and risk being killed at some point, either at work or on your way to and from. Uh, Neither of which are good options. Okay, so you can see these companies are abusing their power by making you choose between your job and your life, potentially even. So that's very unfortunate. Really not ideal, and you do have decisions as an employee of an anti-gun company, as I laid out, none of which are ideal, none of which are very good decisions. So it's not a good situation, right? It really has people in a bad situation. Companies conducting business in this way. So, that's really all there is to say about, no gun policies. There's only really just a few bad options, really. But now getting on to the second point, which is discrimination. Okay, many people will choose their job over their life, or the ability to protect their life, rather. Um, and they won't carry to work, okay, so they'll comply with company policy. However, in a lot of cases, this absolutely happens. High ups at whatever company they may be working at, they get word or they get wind that you are pro gun. Maybe they see it on your social media accounts. Maybe another anti gun employee brought it to their attention or whatever. Maybe you, God forbid, maybe you posted a meme or something like that. Maybe you're just talking about a gun you want. Maybe you're showing off a gun that you recently got. Somehow they get wind that you are pro gun, okay? You get discriminated against, okay? Maybe you get fired right then. Maybe you get pushed out. In any case, you're being discriminated against, okay? Gun owners are not a protected class of citizens, unfortunately, at this time. Um, so nobody really cares, except for Second Amendment people, if you get discriminated for that particular reason. Um, Many on the left would even believe that to be a good thing. Many of them would actually celebrate that or champion that. So it's not a good situation. It's very unfortunate that these two issues happen. Rather that be discrimination in the workplace for being pro gun, or that be just having to choose between your life and your job. It's unfortunate, but it's a really big means of spreading the anti 2A agenda. It absolutely happens through the workplace, and we got to keep it in mind. Um, yeah, in many ways, these companies, these corporations, whatever it may be, they absolutely have more power than these anti-gun politicians, and they're carrying out these politicians' hopes and dreams of gun control. They're carrying it out for them, and it's really disgusting. It's really pretty gross, because it really affects many people. Not only are these people disarmed, which puts them in a dangerous situation, but also, like I said, they get discriminated against if they speak out publicly. So in many cases, they choose not to, and they sort of hide their pro 2A-ness or their gun ownership, which means that's a lot of people, that aren't speaking up for the Second Amendment, which absolutely affects us in the community who are out here trying to spread this message. That's just a few more people, or quite a few really, who aren't helping spread that message because they simply can't, because they might lose their job for it. And this is absolutely by design. Um, like I said, unfortunate, pretty disgusting, and something we should all be aware of. Like I said, there's not a lot of options for you if you're in this situation. No good ones really, but it's just something to keep in mind. That's going to be it for me. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this issue today. So I'm going to get out of here. Goodbye.